look at some of the most significant stories in the Bible, some of our heroes of the faith, what you will find is a common theme. God saying go, them saying yes. Here's the thing, when you look at your story, when I look at mine, when I stop right where I'm at and I turn around and I look back over my life, the most significant, transformative, adventurous moments in my life have included those two things. God saying go and me saying yes. Never underestimate what's on the other side of your yes. When we join God in the path and the plan and the adventure that He is calling us to, there is so much in store for us. On October 2nd, 2011, Mission Church was born. It's a day that most of us will never forget. And on October 2nd, 2017, God revealed to us our first permanent location. 82 Stratford Drive, the future home of Mission Church.
We've been talking for a while now about our 5-year vision, this place in the future that we are believing God for. And it's hitting me even right now as I speak that I am sitting in the location where so much of this vision is going to become a reality. Finding a permanent location for Mission Church has been a lot like looking for a home for your family. One of the first things that we've thought about and have been thinking about for years is location, location, location. And as I sit in this building, if I were to exit out these doors and just stand there for an hour, I would see hundreds of cars driving by this building. And then like a home, like we've thought about size. Does this building satisfy our current needs? And does it also prepare us for growth in the near future? Because we're believing God for growth. And then lastly, we definitely thought about fiscal responsibility. What's a faith-filled decision that's going to stretch us as a church, but also give us as individuals and families the opportunity to be transformed through our generosity through this new permanent location.
It's been amazing to see the hand of God on this entire thing. For the past few months, as we've been putting all the finishing touches on this project, God has clearly gone before us. He really has. God has revealed to us, this is where I'm calling you to go. The question is, will we together as a church say yes? Will you? And will I, and will all of us say yes to God to go on this journey that we are calling Never the Same? As we've been thinking about what is a statement that kind of sums up what we believe is in the heart of God for our church, it's that statement that every single one of us in our church, 100% engagement, will go on this journey. We'll go on this adventure together of saying, God, we want you to use this incredible opportunity, this significant step in the history of our church to change us, to literally transform us, to transform our church, to use this, God, to transform the 10. And so as you might imagine, the question is, man, how are we going to pull this off? And I think that's a good question. But a question that's been moving me the most is not so much how we're going to get there, but what is God wanting to do in us in the process? And what I believe is that God is longing to bring about more transformation in your life and in mine than ever before. I think so much that God wants to do is to use this adventure, to use this big step, bold step, faith-filled step to change us more and more into His image. I believe God is more concerned, not so much with how we're going to get there, but who we're going to be once we do get there. Never the Same is a vision of transformation. Never the Same is a vision for you and I to be changed. It's to be shaped and molded. It's a vision for our church to be shaped and molded. It is a vision for the 10, our neighborhoods all around us that we love so much, that God might use this step to bring about impact and blessing and love and care for our neighbors.
Ultimately, when you boil it all down, the point of this building and this permanent home for Mission Church is to help the thousands of people in the 10 who don't know Jesus. It's to help them find Jesus Christ and to experience His love for the first time. And for thousands of other people some who have experienced Mission Church and some who haven't, who maybe know the love of Jesus. It's to help them follow him as they experience his love in deeper ways. And we just believe that that can be experienced, this finding and following Christ can be experienced when we gather, grow, and go as a church. And when we truly gather, grow, and go as a church, then a church just isn't transformed and a person isn't just transformed, but the 262,000 people in the 10 experience a movement of Jesus.
That's why 100% engagement is the primary goal of Never the Same. It's so that once we do get there, and once God works and provides and does all the different things that we believe he's going to do, that when that day happens, when grand opening happens, you and I can honestly say that, oh my goodness, our lives are different. Our families are different. The lives of our kids are different. God has used this significant step to change us. We've been looking forward to this day for a long time. We really have. And so what we're saying is we want 100% engagement. We want 100% of our church to go on this adventure together. I think the adventure will be a whole lot more fun and a whole lot more effective if all of us go on it together. And so we're asking you to ask God, how would you have us give in such a way that we'll never be the same? I can only imagine if 100% of us ask God. Secondly, believe. God, we're going to believe. As you begin to speak to us about the amount that you would have us faithfully give, we're going to believe that you're going to provide it. We're going to believe that you're the one that's going to come through in the clutch so that we can actually follow through. And thirdly, we're going to commit. God, we're going to commit. On the months where it might be more convenient to bail out, God, we are going to commit. That's the invitation. It's to join me and to join us in 100% engagement as we ask, as we believe, as we commit. And here's what I know about you. Mission Church, you are the kind of church and you're the kind of people, because I've been watching for the last 6.5 years, that when it's all on the line and when there is a significant step of faith and courage, those have been, and I believe this will be, the greatest of moments. Why? Because God is working in our lives and we are trusting him that together we are mission, and together God is going to write an incredible story through Never the Same. Would you engage? I believe that you will, and I'm excited to see God show up in our midst.
Amazing. Amazing. This morning, real early, I was having my cup of coffee and I was watching that video, and a lot of different thoughts came to mind. One of was like, with the amount that I use my hands, I must be some percentage Italian. I'm like, man, this is like... I was also noticing how tan Tommy is and how pale I am. And with the main thing I just thought about as I was watching it this morning is I can't think of a more exciting time to be part of this church than right now. I really can't. And there was a few of us that were part of grand opening back then. A lot of you always tell me time and time again, John, I just wish I could have been there during those middle school days. Well, here's what I know. 5 years from now, there's going to be a whole bunch of people at that facility that say, man, I wish I could have been part of Mission back in the high school days. And we'll tell them, yeah, it was awesome and it was amazing, right? Because together we stepped out and we said yes to go on an adventure together that literally will change the trajectory of this church for the rest of the time. That is this moment. That is this moment. Today is a historic moment in the life of Mission, and I can't think of better people and more wonderful people to go on this adventure with. Right now, our Connections team, they're going to begin to pass out to you our vision guides. It's a book that we've been working on for a few months, getting ready for today. Daniel Larson, Caroline Hutchison have done a great job putting this together and designing all of this. Special thanks to them for all their hard work. And so right now, a vision guide is going to be handed to you. Fight the urge to flip through all of it right now. I'm going to walk us through 3 important parts of it. But certainly this week and in the coming weeks, we'd encourage you guys to read all of it. Spend some time in these vision guides. And so as these vision guides are being passed out, let me just talk about a few really important things as they're being handed to you. I think we can multitask. Number one, as you receive it, open up to the front page. There's a place there for you to write your name in there. What do you think, Francie? They're nice, right? You can open up that front page. There's a place to write your name in there. Write your name in there, and we want you to bring it every week over these next 5 weeks. So this 5-week Never the Same series, it starts right now. Bring the vision guide. We're not going to put our notes on the app like we generally do, because in this vision guide, that's where you're going to be taking the notes, all right? So really important, put your name in there and bring it over the next 5 weeks. Secondly, just inside the back cover, if you open that up, you're going to see our 5-year directional vision. Now, we put some tape on there so you can easily take out that vision card. And the reason we're putting that in there, it's important to know that this significant step is not an aimless kind of random step. It's not at all. It's a strategic one toward the 5-year vision God has called us to. So take that card out. Something I like to do is start to highlight different parts that are already starting to happen over this 5-year vision. So that's the second part. The last part, really important, your vision guide is bookmarked right now with a black card that is our commitment card, okay? And it's bookmarked in the area where we will begin today in just a minute taking notes. It's bookmarked with your commitment card. So right now, if you could just raise up, I think most people have them right now, their commitment card, just to show me that yep, you're following along and everyone received one, great. If for some reason there wasn't one of these in there, we printed 8 billion of them, so we have one for you. This commitment card is really important. Here's why. 5 weeks from right now will be Commitment Sunday. That's Sunday, March 18th. Commitment Sunday. 5 weeks from right now is called what? Commitment Sunday. Really, really important day, okay? And so on Commitment Sunday, you're going to be, and I'm going to be, and we're going to be bringing these commitment cards, and we're going to be placing them in different boxes. It's going to be a really cool experience, making our financial commitment over the next 2 years to fund this new frontier that God is calling us to. Okay, so that's how we're going to do it. We're going to do it through this commitment card. If you lose one, we can get another one to you, but this is really important. And I'm encouraging you guys to use this commitment card as a guide to help you pray in the coming days and weeks of what your commitment is going to be toward this vision. Some specific things I want to talk about real quick, and then I'll begin the sermon for today. This commitment card, the goal of it is on March 18th, is that we will collectively commit $7 million to fund this next step. Now let me break down that number, right? Some of you just like freaked out a little bit. Let me break that down real quick. This $7 million number, that is our goal. And the way we arrived at that goal is pretty simple. If you add up our operating budget right now, current operating budget right now, over the next 2 years, you get to 50% of that $7 million. Is that making sense? Nod some heads. Yeah, you're tracking with me. Our current operating budget to fund mission kids and to run mission students and to run all the different ministries in our church, to do all the different things we do through 4 of the 10, to do all of this over 2 years, our current operating budget is $3.5 million. Add to that $3.5 million more to build out this space, to make it look how I know you want it to look. So that when our neighbors drive by, they're like, I gotta go in there. Man, I don't know what that is, but I wanna go in there. So that's gonna cost some money, $3.5 million to be exact. And you add those two things together, you get to $7 million. Now, all of that is not gonna come in on March 18th. That is a commitment that over those months for 2 years, collectively, that is the goal. That is what we are calling our secondary goal. Our secondary goal. Why? Because we'll reach that by accomplishing our primary goal. What's our primary goal? Glad you asked. 100% engagement. You heard it like 30 times in that video. 100% engagement. What's engagement? It's this. It's you asking God. It's you believing God. And it's you committing to God what He has put on your heart over the course of these 2 years. In the vision guides, we talk a lot more about that, so please read through that at your earliest convenience. If you have any questions, there is a vision kiosk outside, not outside, but just outside these doors. When you enter the lobby, off to the right there, Tommy and I will be there after service. We'd love to answer any of your questions and hook you up with one of these really nice long sleeve dry fit t-shirts, okay? Let me pray, and then we're gonna jump into Genesis 12. God, thank you for this group of amazing people. You know how I feel about them. I love them, God. It is such a tremendous joy to get to pastor this church in such a time as this. God, I thank you for how faithful you've been. The past 6.5 years, it's just littered with your faithfulness. And God, right now, we feel it. We are stepping out into It is an unprecedented journey for us. And God, we know you've already been showing us that you're not only with us, but you're ahead of us, you're out in front. God, I'm praying and I'm asking that you would use Never the Same to do something truly significant in the life of this church. So God, we are excited. God, we thank you for all the different parts. We thank you for the Village of Bloomingdale, their trustees, the mayor, everyone voting unanimously to rezone that building so that we can actually move in there. So many amazing things you've already done just in the past few weeks. And so God, we thank you and we praise you. And God, as we open your word, we ask that you would speak in a profound way. In Jesus' name, amen. Welcome to week 1 of Never the Same, a 5-week study on the life of a guy that used to be known as Abram. Can we say Abram? Yeah, but eventually he would become known as what? Abraham, right? Abraham. This is going to be a great study, and so I'm thrilled that you are with us to go along on this journey. If you're there in chapter 12 of Genesis, we'll start in verse 1. The Lord has said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, your father's household, to the land I will show you. I'm going to make you into a great nation, and I'm going to bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I'm going to choke slam him. I'm going to put him in a headlock," right? It's kind of what's going on there, right? He's like, listen, I got your back. Oh, I got your back. Yeah, I'm saying it's time to go. But you got to understand, I'm already out in front of you. Abram, I have your back. I have your back. And he says, and oh, by the way, Abram, this vision, this invitation to join me in what I'm doing, by the way, it's not only going to bless you. Oh, no. It's going to bless hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands and thousands of people. Look there. He says, listen, whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Abram, you're going to become a pipeline of blessing and hope and healing and beauty to this broken world. Verse 4, what did Abram do? He said, no thanks. No, he didn't say that. He said, so Abram went. He went, as the Lord had told him. His transformational journey begins. 2 key phrases within these first 4 verses we're going to examine for the next few minutes. The first is go from. Go from. Say that with me. Go from. Yes, look there in verse 1. The Lord had said to Abram, say it with me, go from your country. You got to leave, all right? Go from your country, your people, your father's household to the land I will show you. Now, it is easy when we do this study to begin to focus on the land that he's walking to and miss the land he's walking from, right? It's easy for us to do that. We got to understand Abram was called by God to leave his city. He was called by God to leave a place called Ur, kind of a fun one. He was called by God to leave his hometown, his place, this place called Ur. Ur was a wealthy city in Mesopotamia. It probably would have rated pretty high on TripAdvisor. It was not a small place. It was a pretty nice place. About 200,000 people were in Ur. And this was his home. This was his home. And I know every time I do studies on some of the ancient heroes of our faith, it's easy to begin to look at them as if they're like inhuman. You know what I'm saying? Like we look at them like some character that didn't really exist. We look at these ancients as if they were underdeveloped, right? Or possibly even inhuman. We start to think, well, they didn't have what we have. Think about it, right? And part of that's true. Of course, they didn't have the technology that we have today. Isn't it amazing to think that a society could even exist without Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat? I mean, in Ur, there were no selfie sticks, okay? That was not taking place in Ur. But don't think for a minute this was an undeveloped place. We can't think for a minute that this was a whole bunch of people walking around mindless, emotionless, brainless. This was not a collection of human beings just grunting all the time, okay? Like, we got to understand, they did a lot more than grunting in Ur. Abram wasn't a caveman, he was a businessman. And he was a man. And Ur was a city filled with people just like me and you. People that were facing real life challenges and real life opportunities. Abram was a real person. I can't stress this enough. He was a real person who had a real wife that had a real job. This is what we know about Abram. Ur was his home. In fact, I did some research. If he would have had a t-shirt back then, I'm quite sure this would have been the t-shirt that he walked around in Ur with. Did a little research. You got to dig deep into commentaries to understand that one, all right? For Abram, life in Ur was familiar. I mean, 75 years at this point. He's not in his teens. He's not in his 20s. 75 years old. And so for him, life in Ur was familiar. And because it was familiar, it was predictable. And because it was predictable, it had become comfortable. 75 years, things were always the same, which became the greatest setup for one of the greatest stories ever recorded in history of transformation. The storyline of Abram was always the same, but in this moment, it was about to become never the same. Pretty incredible. An interesting feature of Ur, let me touch on this. It was a polytheistic city. In fact, they worshiped all kinds of gods. They didn't worship the one true God. In fact, their main god, interesting fun fact here, their main god was Nana. Now, the reason I bring this up, this is important, my kids call my mom Nana. And so I think you just might want to look into that. I'm not sure what that means, all right? But Nana was a moon god, and this is who they worshiped. When you look into this, you'll find that Abram and his dad and their whole household, they were entrenched in idol worship. Beth Moore writes it this way from the Patriarchs. Such a great study. She writes, "We have no biblical reason to believe Abram and Sarai, his wife, were looking for another god, but God was undoubtedly looking for them." That quote has been hitting me all week because it's in his story I find mine. Here's what we need to know, right? We look at this and we even look into some Jewish tradition. This blew my mind. Jewish tradition even says this. Not only did Abram and his family worship idols, they owned an idol manufacturing business. This is a big manufacturing area. This is what Jewish tradition teaches. Like, think about this. The hands of Abram literally fueled the worship of false gods. Think about this. And I bring this up because of this reason. Your past does not have to determine your future. That's really good news. Your past, some of you, this is your first time ever to church. You picked a good week to come. And I want you to hear from me. Your past, listen, your past does not have to determine your future. I mean, how amazing we see this from the story of Abram. This man who once fueled polytheism would go on to become the father of monotheism. Once, he chose to go from Ur. Going from, it implies a change of location, but a whole lot more than that, doesn't it? It implies a change of life. Like the hands of a potter, God wants to shape and mold his people. He wants to shape and mold your life. He wants to shape it and mold it into something extraordinary, and oftentimes, that kind of shaping takes place outside the city limits of the familiar. It takes place outside the context of what's always been. Why is that? Here's why. You've heard me say it before. Growth begins at the end of your comfort zone. Say that with me. Growth begins at the end of your comfort zone. Some of you don't want to say it because you don't want it to be true. You're like, stop saying that. All right? I wish it wasn't true, but it is true. Growth begins at the end of your comfort zone. It just does. Growth and comfort, it's kind of like the Bears and winning. Rarely do they go together. And it breaks my heart. I wish that weren't true, but it is true. Think about it. I mean, think about it. Not only from Abram's life, think about it from your life. When was the last time you did a growth audit? Tax season's coming. I want you to turn around and do a growth audit over your own life. Look back over your life at the most significant moments of transformation. Here's what you're going to see. You're going to see your little footprints exiting Ur. That's what you're going to see. When I do a growth audit over my life, and I look back over the most significant moments of growth in my own life, I see my own footprints going from something good to experience something greater. That's what I see. I see my own footprints leaving my comfort zone. This is important for us to understand. Growth begins at the end of your comfort zone. It did for Abram, and it does for us. What did Abram do, though? Verse 4, he chose growth over comfort. Verse 4, look, God said go, Abram said yes. That's the point. Verse 4, so Abram went. He left. So Abram went as the Lord had told him. We get more detail in Hebrews 11. If you need kind of a shot in the arm tomorrow morning as you begin Monday, read Hebrews 11. It will wake you up. This is the hall of faith. Listen what it says of him. By faith, Abraham. By what? By figuring it out? Yes or no? Not a chance. By comparing what God is saying to his Excel spreadsheet over the next 10 years of how he's going to orchestrate his life. Not a chance. It doesn't mean we don't plan. It doesn't mean we don't use our mind. But there are key moments in our lives when God calls us to leave Ur. And the only way you're ever going to start packing is through faith. And this is what we see from one of our heroes. By faith, Abraham. When called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, what did he do? He obeyed and went. Fast obedience, we call it. He obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Never the same as an invitation to leave Ur. You know that? You're like, well, John, I know you don't literally live in Ur. It is an invitation for you to leave the good, to experience something greater. This commitment card, it's more than a commitment card. It's more than just paper. It's a one-way ticket to transformation. Hear me on this. Some of you know me, like you really know me. We've been doing this thing for years. You know my heart. This is way more than about a building. That actually doesn't move me that much. This is about transformation. This is about God changing you and changing me. And I want us to just imagine if 100% of us chose to engage in this. Imagine what that would do. If 100% of us said, all right, yeah, I got it. I'm going to choose and not be comfortable for a little bit. Imagine if 100% of us chose to engage in this. What might that do to our church? I mean, can you imagine this? At the end of this thing, we're going to have a whole lot more than just a new church. You know this. We will have brand new lives. Every single one of us, starting with me. I'm not done. I am so unfinished. And that's why God has been inviting me and us to lead the way, to say yes. Man, we're leaving Ur again. And my hope and my dream is that we're not the only ones. That together, this community of faith we call mission, that we will leave Ur together. Never the same is about responding like Abram to the call. You know, as God begins to call you, but it's really important to see that something came along with this call. In fact, this part gets me really fired up. We can't miss it. Something came along with this call to go from. It's two other essential words, I will. I will. Can't miss this. Why do we have both of these going on in these first 4 verses? Here's why. Transformation always includes 2 things. Our participation, his promise. Think about it. Every time we've seen God do any kind of transformative work in our lives, both have been involved. Our participation, his promise. 7 times in 4 verses. I just read it to you, and you missed it. Go back and read it. 7 times. In 4 verses, these 2 words, I will. From God to Abram, not from Abram to God. And in this moment, we begin to see who the hero of this story is. It actually isn't Abram, but it's actually the promise of God. Saying, Abram, I will, Abram. As you start walking, and it's going to be a long walk, and you'll know when you get there. I mean, think about that, right? Abram, I will. When Abram starts reaching for the wheel, Abram, I will. I'm the one that's called you to this. I'm the one that's going to come through. Abram, I will. Abram, I'm calling you to a new place. But what's going to get you to that new place is not the place. It's my promise. It's his promise. I will. 7 times in 4 verses, God says to Abram, I will. Here's the thing, as we ask God, and God begins to speak, there's something really important I got to point out, something I've never seen before until this week, is that God speaks in a couple different ways. As you begin to ask God, as you begin to go on this journey of faith, God's going to speak if you ask. And some of you are going to receive a direct word from God. You're just going to know. And others, you're going to receive an indirect word from God. Here's what I mean. I want you to think about this journey through the lens of Abram's wife, Sarai. Think about her. She lived in Ur too, you know. Don't think for a second. She had all the coupon clippings down within the city of Ur. She had all of it figured out. She lived in Ur too, right? That was her hometown too. Can you imagine how that initial conversation must have gone? Come on, these are real people, right? Sarai saying to Abram, where are we going? Well, it's a good question. Glad you brought that up. Well, you see, honey, God said, we'll know when we get there. I mean, think about that conversation between the two of them. This is really important to see this. Beth Moore writes it this way: the God of glory did not appear to her. Sarai had nothing but Abram's word on which to base the most radical move of her life. This is amazing. Oftentimes, people kind of say different things about her, but I want you to think about this. She never heard directly from God. She had an indirect word through Abram. This has been so helpful for me this week. Why? When I look back over my life, some of the most significant steps of faith in my personal life or for my family's life or for this church have come like that. It's actually been an indirect word from God through someone close to me. I think about how many times a word from God, he has spoken to me through Tommy. He has spoken to me through Mark, through Justin, through key volunteers like David or Ed or Todd. How many words I've just felt this. Not come directly to me, but it's come through them. How many key moves we've made as a church or as my family, a word that's come from God to Kelly and through Kelly to me. Or through key volunteers like Karen or like Dawn or like staff members like Jess or Grace. You would be shocked at the amount of extraordinary things that have happened around here and in my personal life that have been indirect words. They didn't come directly to me. They came through someone very close to me. And here's why I bring this up. This is so important. Over the next 5 weeks, some of you, you're going to have an Abram experience. You're going to hear directly from God. There's going to be a bunch of you that you actually experience this like her. It's going to be an indirect word. And the point is this. It's not whether it's direct or indirect. The point is faith. The point is obedience. The point is saying, God, I trust you. The point is saying yes. I mean, this is so much of our story in starting this church. Early 2010. I mean, it not only makes me emotional, but it kind of scares me to think, I didn't know. We didn't know how much was on the line. We just didn't. We really didn't. We had no idea what was on the other side of our yes. We really didn't. And we've been praying for months and months, 10 months to be exact. And finally, early January 2010, I had a direct word from God. Some of you, you know what I'm talking about. You've heard from God before. Unfortunately, there weren't doves. I was hoping for that, but there weren't doves. And it wasn't audible, all right? That would have been, nice. It wasn't. You guys know what I'm talking about? When you've heard from God, kind of nod your head. A few of you have had this experience. You just know. You just know that you know, like you know your own name. You know. But Kelly's experience was totally different. She did not get a direct word from God. It was an indirect word. And as I've been preparing for this, my level of respect for her is just, it's already high, but it's gone through the roof. I think of how much faith to trust that God was speaking through this knucklehead, that it was time for us to leave. And let me tell you, the Ur we used to have was nice. Oh, it was really nice. They had benefits. Have you guys heard of those before? I used to have these amazing benefits. It was an amazing church we were a part of, speaking to a whole bunch of people, leading an amazing team. That was our best friends were there during that season, 7 years. That's what Ur felt like. It was so good, yet God was speaking to us, John, Kelly, I've got something even greater. But you got to say yes. And it gives us chills. We talked about it on the way here this morning. It gives us chills to think about what was on the other side of that yes. And I have no idea, neither do you, the lives that are going to be touched, helped, marriages that will be healed, physical bodies that will literally be healed, students that will find their way back to Jesus Christ in a profound way because of the collective yes. I think we'll see some of those stories, but most of them we're going to find out about in heaven. Never underestimate what's on the other side of your yes. And when God speaks directly or indirectly, we respond with obedience. We respond in faith. I want us to dream a little bit for a second. I want you to imagine late next fall, and I'm being real careful on any key dates of when this grand opening is going to happen. Tommy has threatened my life on this one. I heard an indirect word from, okay. Late next fall. It's our grand opening weekend. I want you to just try to dream real quick, okay? Just picture this. Picture us in there. It's just going to be buzzing that morning. We're going to be looking at each other oh my, it's here. Oh my goodness. I wonder who's going to show up, right? And I want you to imagine when that countdown goes down to 0, that first service, and we're in there, and we start to worship God together. I want you to picture this moment. I want you to picture this moment when together we're worshiping the one who made it happen. When together we're saying, God, it was your love. God, it was your power. God, it was your grace that pulled all of this together. We're not the heroes. You're the hero. We turn the spotlight back onto the one who thought of this entire thing in the first place. We say, God, this is yours. This is about you. God, look what you're doing. I mean, can you feel that moment? We're going to get to experience that moment together. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be amazing. And I've been just imagining what must have the grand opening weekend been like for Abram and his crew. 1,000-mile journey, scholars say. You talk about a long walk of faith. I mean, the whole are we there yet? I think came from that first journey, right? And finally, they reached Canaan. Can you imagine what that grand opening was like? Can you imagine what was in their hearts? I want you to picture Abram and his crew on that weekend saying, God, it is amazing what you have done. It is incredible all that you brought us through. Picture them. And now picture who they would have been if they would have stayed in Ur. This is about transformation. This is about me and you getting out onto the frontier where it happens. Leaving what's known and comfortable. For the sake of our future worship, we can't stay in Ur. For the sake of our own transformation, we can't stay in Ur. For the sake of experiencing God in a brand new way, who's ready to start packing? Who's ready to start packing? Who's ready to say yes? Who's ready to say, man, I want more than a t-shirt, but I want a t-shirt. I want more than a dry fit, but I want a dry fit. God, I want a new life. And God, I've grown a lot. Oh man, I'm not who I used to be. But oh Lord, I'm not who I'm about to be, because I'm saying yes. I'm going to live on the frontier. I'm going to leave Ur. I'm going to walk with the people of God toward the promises of God. Who's ready to start packing? Who's ready to start moving toward the direction God is calling us to? Here's the key verse, and then I'm going to stop talking for a minute. The key verse for this, I love this. 2 Corinthians 3:18. We are being changed. What does that mean? It means this: you're not done. I'm not done. We're unfinished. There's more transformation that God wants to write into your story. We're being changed into what? Good question. Into his image. Sons and daughters looking more like him. We're being changed into his image with ever increasing glory. Go through the vision guide this week. Put that one to memory. I could have picked a long verse, but I love you guys. I picked a short one, okay? You're welcome. Put that to memory. And have that sword ready. We learned about last week. For Abram, this change took place not in the familiar, it took place on the frontier. And we're going to close with a song that, where's Laura at? Come here, Laura. This is my big sister, my sister-in-law. You can tell with the complexion. I'll leave it there, all right? Stay up here. There have been so many key moments over the past 6.5 years where God has given her a word that has come to me. We are not done. That came from her. In so many moments where God has used her as a prophetess in the life of this church, you guys just don't even know it. And so I think it was in November, we were in her kitchen. Our whole family was together doing what we do best, eating deep dish Lou Malnati's pizza. And God speaks a lot when we eat Lou Malnati's pizza. And we were there in the kitchen, and you played this song. And we were sitting there as a family, and we were worshiping just as a family to this song she's about to sing. And I said, Laura, on February 18th, you're singing that song. I want you to sing that song over our people, because the words of it have so much to do with this adventure that God is inviting you into. Let me pray for you. God, thank you for what you're doing. It's a beautiful thing. I see it, God. I see it so clearly. The life change in families and marriages, in the lives of singles, in the lives of our students, in the lives of empty nesters, in the lives of every age group. You're calling us to the frontier. And God, what I'm asking as Laura sings this song over us, and these lyrics just begin to hit us, may we begin to talk to you, God, and may we begin to hear from you as you speak to your sons and daughters. We are yours. We belong to you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, we are going to prepare to leave here in just a minute, but I do just want to, as we go, remind us of a few things and point out some hopeful kind of next steps and tools as we begin this adventure together. The first is this commitment card that John talked a lot about. This is something that is much more than a card, but it's actually something that's been to be woven into your prayer life and to inspire your and my generosity. And so I'm asking that you would take this and you would place it somewhere that you see it. We've got one sitting in the center of our house on our kitchen table. And I'm going to be asking and believing and committing. And Grace, my wife, she's going to be doing the same. We're going to be doing that together. Ask. And my tendency is, I have the tendency to then answer for him. But ask and listen. And then when he speaks, believe him for it. And commit. And parents, this is not just your journey alone. But right now, this morning, in Mission Kids and in students, your kids have heard about this invitation to be never the same as well. And so one of the things I know that we in our culture love about like New Year's is it's a new beginning. The slate's kind of wiped clean. And as a family, you can go into this season having these conversations together and saying it's a new day for our family. And we're going to have a story of faithfulness as a family when we were never the same. And so share these conversations with your kids and involve them. Maybe, I know a lot was just thrown at you, maybe you've got all sorts of new questions that have come up. Our team has worked really hard creating a new website that is going to be really helpful to address a lot of those questions. It's weareneverthesame.com. And so you could be reminded of the vision of everything you've heard today. You can be reminded of the primary and secondary goals and how to best engage in this adventure. It's also the first button right there as you open up the Mission Church app. So if you open it up, you'll see in the top left, Never the Same button. You can hit that and access this material as well. Lastly, if you're in and you're like, hey, I'm going first, I'm ready to lead out, I'm committed to Never the Same, and I want to go first with what God's giving, and you have yet to receive your shirt, you can do that at the Never the Same kiosk that's out in the lobby. John Peacock will be there, our executive pastor Tommy Bowman will be there, and you can pick this up and join those of us that are saying, we're at the edge, but we're in this together, and we are starting this adventure. And finally, I just want to say this, from me personally to you, thank you. It may not be worth much, but from the bottom of my heart, thank you. It is such an honor and a privilege to be linked arm in arm with an amazing group of people that show up, stand on the faithfulness of God, and when he says go, we say yes, and we follow. And so I love you guys, and I'm excited for all that God is going to do as he transforms each and every one of us and this church. May we never be the same. Love you guys. We'll see you next week. We are Mission.